Record. Hello and welcome to Atlanta Film Festival's Creative Conference. Thank you for joining us. This panel is about screenwriting. I'm with J.V. Hart. Thank you, sir, for joining me today.
My pleasure. It's always fun to be part of the Atlanta Film Festival, which I actually attended in 1972.
And so I think that was before we officially became a festival, but was that like a bathhouse in Piedmont Park or some crazy location? Because I know that's where we got our start.
Yeah, we showed our first film at some theater downtown.
Got it.
And that's all I remember. It was
Well, I mean,
the
it was
biggest
the
audience
that's
that ever saw our
enough.
film. Yeah.
Well, that's awesome. Yeah, we were started by independent filmmakers back in the 70s and then kind of became official.
Yeah.
I think I want to say 77 or 78, and all those people now have kind of grown up to be our board members and well, now many of them are retired as well.
Yeah.
So speaking of the 70s, so you started off producing films. And then
Right.
you did 3 in the 70s and then Give Me an F in 84, but kind of, at least on your IMDb, kind of disappeared until 1991. So how did you go from producing, directing, kind of what happened in those early years?
It's interesting because I didn't disappear. You just suddenly got nothing made. Give Me an F was the first script that I had written about my cheerleading days as a male cheerleader, and I was even embarrassed to put my name on it. So I put an alias on it, who was a guy I hated in college, so nobody knew it was me. And the same thing on Frat Rats. I wrote a script called The Frat Rats, which became a big issue with Animal House. Same thing. I didn't put my name on it. And when Give Me an F finally got made, I had to put my name on it. And I'm not, I wish they'd made the script, not the film, but it started me as a writer. I mean, I finally put my name out there. So from 84 to 91, I was in development deal hell.
Got it.
But it was those days where you walked in and pitched an idea and they threw money at you. I wrote for Redford and Newman. I wrote for Whoopi Goldberg. I mean, I wrote for all these people, and you weren't getting anything done. And my son, my son and daughter went to private school in New York, and I was paying for it because I was making money. And they would always say, "Dad, you're in the movie business." My friends always ask me, "What have you done?" And I go to the closet and show them a closet full of scripts that I'd been paid to write, but didn't get done. It wasn't until Hook and Dracula.
And that seems to be a common theme with writers that a lot of people don't understand, is that, you may only have I mean, you are an exception to this rule, obviously. You have many credits on IMDb. And many fantastic credits, but there are a lot of people who have had some successful shows and only have 3 or 4 or, a handful of credits on IMDb. But then when you ask them, well, how many things have you been paid to write that no one knows?
Yeah.
There's, well, I can show you a closet full, which speaks to kind of the challenge of getting things made.
It is, and it also is a lesson in perseverance. And one of my mantras is never grow up, never give up. So that's kind of sustained me. And it wasn't until 1988, and I had written some scripts for some big stars. When I had kids, I had kids in 79 and 82. And if I had not had kids, and Judy and I had not raised them in New York, I probably never would have written Hook, because it was their idea.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't my idea. It wasn't Steven Spielberg's idea. It wasn't, it was Jake Hart's idea and Julia Hart's idea. And this was at a time in my career when I'd been around a while. I was in my 40s. I had not had anything major produced except Give Me an F, which was an embarrassment. And so when I called my agent, my son basically, at the dinner table, we played the what if game. What if the Cinderella's slipper didn't fit? What if Prince Charming had bad breath? What if the ring didn't fit Frodo's finger? And that was the night that Jake said, "Hey, Dad, did Peter Pan ever grow up? And I went, that's a stupid question. You know, great parent I am. No, he never grew up. And then Jake sort of defiantly said, yeah, but what if Peter Pan grew up? And it's kind of part of our family mythology now. But that night we sat down and I went, whoa, that's exactly what all of us have been trying to figure out, is how to do Peter Pan again. And John Hughes had wanted to do it. Steven Spielberg had wanted to do it. Michael Jackson wanted to do it. Um, Lasse Hallström was supposed to direct a Peter Pan, but it was always the same story.
Mm-hmm.
The Darlings go back to,
Yeah.
same story. Here's Peter, here's Captain Hook. And when Jake said that, I went, holy shit, that's exactly it. You know, we all grew up. We all forgot how to fly, but Captain Hook's still out there. And we carved out a story that night. Family. Jake was 6. Julia was 3. And we can't, and my wife would never reveal her, she would never look her age anyway. But we came up with a story that night. And I figured the worst thing I could do to Peter Pan was make him a lawyer. We figured what did Peter Pan grow up to be? He grew up to be a lawyer.
Poor guy.
But then the whole mythology of Wendy and the Great Ormond Street Hospital, which is where J.M. Barrie left his rights, it all folded into this story. Everybody in town turned it down. I was afraid to tell my agent about this Peter Pan growing up story because it was blasphemy. It was treading on sacred ground. Everybody in town turned it down. Every studio, every executive, and it was a very passionate pitch. I remember one executive said to me, God, that's a great story. I'm really moved by it, but I just don't think grown-ups can fly. And if I could have flown out the window at that moment, I would have done it. And so we shelved it. We put it away. And every Christmas, my kids and my wife would give me some Peter Pan gift. And I would just go, stop it. You're killing me. Because we knew it was unique and original and bold and daring.
Mm-hmm.
And I also knew at that point that Robin Williams was the only actor who could play a grown-up Peter Pan. And that was a pipe dream.
Mm-hmm.
And finally 2 producers I was working with on a development deal that never got made said, what do you have that nobody wants to do? What do you have that's burning a hole in your pocket? And I took my little 10-page treatment off the shelf, gave it to them, and they introduced me to Nick Castle, who had just directed The Boy Who Could Fly. Nick and I hit it off. They begged the head of TriStar Pictures at that point to make us a lowball development deal and create another development deal. And Nick and I spent the next year under the radar. Nobody knew what we were doing, working on the script. And by the time we turned it in, that studio head had gone and a new one had come in. Mike Medavoy came in. And the usual thing that happens is that when you change regimes like that, everything goes out the window that was in development. And we don't want anything to do with this. Put it and turn around, get rid of it, abandon it. Except Mike read the script and said, wait a minute. This is big. And Sony at that point had just taken over Columbia, and they were looking for their first big tentpole movie. And Medavoy resurrected it and said, "This is big. Let's do something with this." And my longtime agent, John Levin, took the script to Dustin Hoffman and took the script to Robin Williams before a director was attached.
Interesting.
They had an instinct about it that if you could pull the right people together, you could have your pick of directors. And I, of course, when I heard that Robin was on board, I was ecstatic. I mean, it was like dream number one, and then Mike and Dustin signed on as well. He wasn't who I wrote Captain Hook for, but he made it happen.
Mm-hmm.
And then they sent the script to 5 directors on a weekend. I didn't know any of this until later. They sent the script out to 5 directors, said you have to read it this weekend and say you're in or out. Yeah, and I have the family in Wyoming. I think we rented out our apartment to keep the lights on. We were in Wyoming staying with friends who had loaned me money while while I was writing the script. And I'll never forget it. We were at Cadillac Jack's having burgers and fries, and I was hoping my credit card worked, you know. And in those days, you didn't have cell phones. If
No.
you did, they were like this
Oh
size
yeah.
of brick. Um, so you would go down and check your answering machine. For those of you that may or not know what an answering machine is, it's not voicemail; it's actual machine. Um, so I went downstairs. I used my telephone credit card. Because you had one of
Yeah, I
those
remember those.
to place a call to my home and then do my little things where I can hear if anybody called me. And there was a message from my agent, from John Levin, who said, "Call me as soon as possible." So oh, that's interesting. Maybe I got a job. I hang up the phone. I do another credit card call. I call CAA. I ask for the John, and usually he's in a meeting. He'll get
Yeah,
back to you. They're never available.
never.
Yeah. John got right on the phone. And I went, "Hey, what's up?" And he said, he didn't, no beat around the bush on how are you? Fine. He just said, a very important director wants to do Hook. And I said, we've got a director. I've got Nick is directing. And he repeated it again. A very important director wants to do Hook. And I said, if it's not Steven Spielberg, then we've got nothing to talk about. And he said, that's who it is. So I'm going, wow, gobsmacked, mic drop. So I go back upstairs to where all the kids and Judy are all waiting, like, did you get a job? Can we eat? And I sat down and tried very nonchalantly, trying not to just explode. Yeah, Steven Spielberg's going to direct Hook, and all their faces went, ah. And Judy had always known in her gut that that's my wife, that if Steven ever heard about Hook, he would drop everything and do it. Uh, we'd all known each other earlier on in our careers, uh, briefly, and that began the whole snowball with Hook.
Yeah.
I mean, the schools all knew about it. They were all cheering because they knew how hard we tried to do the story. And I was also writing Dracula at the same time. And
Interesting.
nobody had wanted to do Dracula either. Every studio passed because it's been done 100 times. Why do you want to do Dracula again?
Yeah. Now that's all they want to do is remake stuff.
Yeah.
Oh, how the industry changes and ebbs and flows.
Yeah. And uh, Winona Ryder read that script. Everybody was trying to get it. She wanted to do something things more grown up. They
Mm-hmm.
gave her a stack of scripts. Dracula's on the bottom. And when they came back to her and said, "What do you want to do?" She said, "I want to do Dracula." And they were going, "Why?" All her managers and agents. And she said, "Have you read the script?" No. And we had barely been able to even develop that one. It was going to be a TV movie on the USA Network. Karen Moore, God bless her, put it into development so I could at least write the script. Um, and when the script went in, she said, "Jim, we can't make this for $2 million." You know, that I know. So she gave it back to me for a year, which she had to go fight to do that. Because then our business, they don't like to put anything in turnaround, they'll be embarrassed. And she said, "But a year to the day, if you don't have this set up, I got to take it back, and you're not going to like what I do to it."
Wow.
And literally the week of that year, Coppola signed on. So Winona got the script to Coppola as a makeup call for she didn't show up for Godfather 3. And she asked him to read it to see if she should do that part, play Mina. Um, Trying to re-engage him. And what I was told later was that Francis called her on the phone and said, "You absolutely should do this part. And oh, by the way, who's directing?" And so in a 4 week or 5 week period, I went from being fired by my agency, not able to get an agent anywhere in town, to Hook and Dracula and Spielberg and Coppola wanting to do the two projects that everybody in town had passed on. And it was a
That's
pretty heady
amazing.
time for me
Yeah.
and my family.
Yeah, I can imagine. So that's interesting. I didn't realize, my assumption was that those people were in place and that those deals were made and that, you were brought in to take source material. I mean, I knew the story about Hook.
Yeah.
But so that's interesting. So I guess a couple of questions. So when you're looking at Hook, was that the first time that you had had a writing partner? Or have you always kind of had a partner in writing? Because I
No,
see a
that's a
lot of
good
your,
question. Yeah. Yeah. That's a good question. Go ahead. Go ahead and finish. I'm sorry.
no, no, no. Was
Uh,
that the first time?
the person that I worked the person that I worked with as a writing partner in the beginning was Bill Kirby. And Bill Kirby did The Rose. He did Hooper. He was had been around a long time. And I had written a script under an assumed name called The Frat Rats, which was basically Animal House. Um, Off the radar. Nobody knew what I was doing. I didn't even put my real name on it. And Bill Kirby's agent read it and said, I want you to meet Bill because Bill is looking for something like this to do, and you guys would be a great combination. So Kirby and I worked together on two scripts, The Frat Rats and Still Crazy. And Still Crazy was a sequel to Frat Rats about crazy young candidates for U.S. Senate. Back in the day when you could get away with comic antics and what have you. But Kirby said to me that he was the last writer I was going to work with before I started writing myself.
Hmm.
So Bill was a great introduction to the craft and how to collaborate and how to adapt to somebody else's rhythms and what have you. But then I wrote by myself for a long time, and it wasn't until Nick Castle that I took on a partner again. And when Nick was replaced by Spielberg, he was, didn't want his name on it or anything. I insisted he take
That was
story
going to be
credit.
my next question is
Yeah,
how did that go over?
yeah, not well.
Yeah.
As Nick said, I made enough money to pay for the Xanax, you know.
Yeah.
Um,
Tough one.
but they made Nick a very handsome deal.
Yeah.
But I insisted he keep his name on the script. So you'll see the credits, story by or
Mm-hmm.
screen story by myself and then an ampersand and then Nick. And
Mm-hmm.
then screenplay by myself and Malia. Malia was brought in during production uh, to work, and she got credit as well. Um, but that was and now that you asked the question, now I work with partners all the time.
Yeah.
My son is my writing partner. That son, that 6-year-old that
Yeah.
said, "What did Peter Pan grow up?" He's now my writing partner. Yeah.
So I want to jump back to the Spielberg and Francis stuff, but while we're talking about it, because this was one of my questions later on, what are the advantages and disadvantages of working with a partner? A lot of kids, up and coming are writing solo. And sometimes it goes well, sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes they have partners, and finding the right partner is important. But having done both, what are kind of the advantages and disadvantages, or what do you love and not
Right.
like about this?
Well, it's interesting is now that I'm at this stage in my career, I can pretty much decide if I'm going to do this myself or I want to bring in a partner.
Mm,
Or as partners, you create the idea together, or your approach as partners.
right.
Um, I learned a lot from Kirby. I learned a great deal from Nick because Nick and I were on the same page. We both had the same ideas about how to tell this story, and we would sit around and smoke cigars and drink, single malt and spit out the movie, and then I would go and write. And then he would come in and doll it up. So
Interesting.
we had that kind of rhythm.
Hmm.
With Bill Joyce, we did Epic together. Bill's a very famous children's book illustrator. And we were both from Louisiana. We were both, we were finally connected years later. Um, we would sit around, and we like to say we see the movie, then we write it. And with Bill, I did most of the writing, and he would come in and doll it up or give me notes and what have you. And again, it was incredibly rewarding, even though we would butt heads um, on many occasions. The we knew that we didn't have this opportunity if we weren't working together.
Mm-hmm.
Bill couldn't have done this by himself, and I couldn't have done it by himself. But based on his book, we came up with all the ideas. But we did butt heads, and I learned a lot about working with animators in that respect. I've had three female writers, which I actually, in many ways, prefer, especially if they've been actors. Um, they bring something to the table about character and from an acting point of view,
Yeah.
which is really important for writers to take acting classes, or
Interesting.
bring actors in that because they have to process the character the same way you do when you're writing it.
Mhm.
So they would ask me questions I didn't have answers for, and that's when I started the whole. We'll talk about that later. The whole Hart chart toolkit
Mhm.
about building character. So I learned a lot when I had female actor, director, writers. They brought something to the table, especially and also a female point of view on how the female character is coming off in this scene, or
Mhm.
how this treatment that you think is cool and funny is really not cool and funny to
Yeah.
that character. They're not going to react the same way the male character would react. So that was a great benefit. Was having an actor, male or female, but having a female writing partner on certain projects was essential. I couldn't have done it. I would have, and I have a reputation for writing good female characters. Jodie Foster and Winona, Caroline Goodall and Hook. I mean, they're great characters, but I needed that female energy in
Mhm.
the process
Yeah.
who would challenge me, and say, "You sure you want to go that way? Because if you go that way as a woman, they're gonna, And I'm writing with my son. Jake and I were on probably our 10th project together. We still haven't, as a father son, gotten produced, but we're writing partners on three projects right now.
Yeah.
One of them is an unofficial prequel to Hook,
Interesting.
the story of young
Mhm.
James. My daughter co-writes with her husband. She's a writer director. She's just about to direct her sixth film, but she found her um, uh, creative combination with her husband, who was a
Nice.
producer, Jordan,
Hmm.
Julian Jordan. He was a producer. He produced La La Land, and then they wrote together. And so Julia was able to bring in not only her life mate, her husband, and father of her children, but also a creative partner that seems to work very well.
Yeah.
So and also with the TV streaming and all the power of television that we've seen, learning how to be in a writer's room is essential.
Yeah. And
And
then I was gonna, yeah,
yeah,
I'm gonna
you
ask you
have to, yeah, go
about
ahead.
that. Yeah.
Yeah.
But let's back up first before we get there. So, you worked, obviously you were well into the writing process when Steven Spielberg came on. Same with Francis Ford Coppola. Um, and then I think you worked with Zemeckis too, if I recall, correct?
Well, Zemeckis and I never worked together. I worked with Carl Sagan for the 3 years before that.
Got
Zemeckis
it. Okay.
Zemeckis
Yeah.
kept Michael Goldenberg on, who'd come in after me,
Got it. All right.
and before Minnow Mays, who should have gotten credit on Contact.
So fabulous movie, a fabulous book.
Yeah.
What, obviously they're very different in their styles, very different in their backgrounds. What are, this was, you had been a writer for quite some time, but these were also like, the big leagues, so they say. So, what were some of the mistakes that you made, if you made any, if that you remember, and kind of how you overcame them, and what did you take away from these projects? What did
Yeah.
you learn that you could move forward into the next and the next and the next with?
Well, I learned a lot on Hook because I made mistakes on Hook. Um, Steven came on after we had developed the script and uh, with another director. So he was already coming into a situation that was loaded for
Mm-hmm.
him. He'd always wanted to do Peter Pan. He envisioned Peter Pan as a musical. He still feels like that Hook should have been a musical. Um, uh, and so he, I was, what's the word? I was the uninvited guest. I was the adopted child. I was the
Yeah.
child that you took over for the other parents. You were now
The
the
forced
the foster
hired.
child. Yeah.
Yeah.
So he had to deal with me in the beginning. Um, and we had known each other from years ago, when he and Judy and I were all starting out, and we knew each other. So it he needed to put his imprint and make this his.
Mm-hmm.
And I already covered a lot of the ground I already hit a lot of the walls that he was inevitably hitting.
Mm-hmm.
And I have probably had too many solutions uh, that did not allow him to hit those walls himself and make his own decisions.
Interesting.
So it's interesting though, because I was the executive producer. I was, around the whole time, and it was also our kids. I mean, he really, when he found out that it was Jake's idea, that changed his
Yeah.
I mean, he understood that this is family, that our family had grown up and evolved with this project.
Yeah.
So he kept me around the whole time. But Malia came in because Dustin wanted his own writer. And I think the biggest problem that that and in looking back is Stephen didn't have enough time with the script.
Mm.
He needed another 6 months for the script. Um, but we had a release date, and he was backed into that release date. So here's what I learned from Hook: the job of the screenwriter is not to impose his or her vision on the film. The job of the screenwriter is to enable and help the director achieve their own vision of the film. And regardless of when you were brought in, if you originated, it was your baby, whatever. And I got shelled for that, saying that in certain writer groups. Who, I mean, if you're not able to collaborate and you're not able to let anybody else into your process, you might as well be a sculptor or, a novel, not even a novelist. They have editors. You're in a medium where you're gonna the guy who brings coffee to the set is gonna have an opinion.
Mm-hmm.
It is that kind of medium. Everybody's got an idea about the movie, you
Yeah.
know, and you need to learn to listen to the costume designer, listen to the set designer, listen to the DP, listen to the director, listen to the actors. And Francis taught me something in Dracula, which is a very different experience. Francis said, don't, he said, we go into these meetings and you have 15 people around the table that are all going to give you notes, you know. And Francis would say, don't speak first. Let them put their cards on the table,
Mm.
and nod and go, that's a good idea. Oh, that's a good idea. He said, even pretend to take notes. That son of a bitch doesn't have no, it's the ass one, and, but then the notes that haunt you, the notes that what keep you up at night, the notes that stop you, other process, those are the ones to go back and address. And then when you do, and they read your script again, you may have only changed one thing, and they feel like they're reading a new script because that one thing that was my idea, and he did it or she did it. So again, those are the two, and from Francis, I also learned that Francis is a writer first.
Yeah.
And when you're working with a writer director or a writer producer or a writer actor, I knew that Francis could fix any problem that I couldn't. He's a writer first. And the other thing I learned from Francis about this, he said to be a great director, you first have to be a good writer. You must have the storytelling skills, structure
Mm-hmm.
of character. You must have those basics some kind of command of them. He said, you can be a very successful director without being a writer, but you'll never be a great director if you're not a writer first. And we remember that he won an Academy Award for being a writer before he
Yes.
directed, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So that was another one for me that I knew that if there was an issue creatively, that Francis would have a solution. He wouldn't have to hire another writer.
Yeah.
He'd just go do it himself. Yeah. Which was a great comfort zone to me because I had a master, you know, as my backstop, my pillow,
Yeah.
my soft landing. Did that answer your question? I'm sorry.
No, it completely answered my question. That was fabulous. So, and in true Hollywood fashion, this cracked me up. You did Treasure Island, and then of course they went, "Hey, if he's done a live action, he can do the Muppets."
Yeah, exactly. And
Love,
that was my
yeah.
most fun.
Oh my God, I love Muppet
Yeah,
movies.
yeah.
But so what was it like working with Brian Henson and then Carl Sagan on Contact? I mean, you're kind of what's fascinating is you're working in all these different genres with all these amazing people. So
Yeah.
what were the takeaways from Henson? Because you also did, I think, Jack and the Beanstalk with
Yeah,
Henson.
well, I
Yeah.
brought Brian. Yeah, I brought Brian in on that because of our experience on Muppet Treasure Island. The I, of course, my kids in those days, the Muppets were they'd grown up with them.
Yeah.
Grown up with them. I'd grown up with the kids and the Muppets. And again, John Levin had said, "Listen, the next Muppet movie is going to be Muppet Treasure Island. They're having trouble. Disney was about to pull the plug on the project." And Brian and when I went, Brian wanted to meet, and we met, and we just it was they are that family. I mean, Jim and his wife, they raised these kids in Muppetdom, so they're like archaeologists. They're like they know every habit that every Muppet has, every
Mm,
fear, every foible, what they like to eat, what they don't like to eat, who they'll go out with, who they won't. You know, it's just they're a living, breathing family. So Brian and I met, and he said, "Listen, we can't get a green light from Disney on this. It's not working." And he said, "Would you read the script?" So I read the script. And there were no human beings in the script. It was all Muppets. And I said, you can't do Lon John Silver and Jim Hawkins as Muppets. So I think they had Gonzo and Rizzo were Jim and Hawkins. You know,
yeah.
that's how they solved the problem. Um, and, and I'm going to talk out of school now. And Brian said, well, you're right, but there's a reason for that. And the reason was that Frank Oz didn't like to work with child actors, and he didn't want to be working with a child actor playing Jim Hawkins, even though he had like 15 children. He didn't want to work with, you know. So
That's
that's what,
probably why.
yeah, that's uh, uh, that's why they didn't have any humans. I said, well, I can't help you then because this will you if you don't have you've always had human beings in every Muppet movie,
Hmm.
you know. There's always the bad guy or whatever the people they interact with. So I said, well, let me write a couple of scenes and see if we can't convince Frank. You know, so I wrote a couple of scenes um, that that had never been in the script anywhere about Jim and Lon John Silver. Um, and Frank read them and got back to me and said, "We need more of this. Do more." So he was in. It was the most fun, the most fun that I've had in terms of an experience and for my family too, because we all went to London, which we love, and we got to hang out with Frank and all the players. Brian to me still is the most underrated director that's
Hmm.
out there.
Yeah.
He there's no fear. Knows everything about the deal. He grew up in this world. He grew up as a puppeteer, you know. But when we were trying to cast because you literally cast the Muppets into a role.
Hmm.
That was the process,
Oh,
you
cool.
know. And so we were trying to find something for Kermit to do. and I would make a suggestion, and Brian would go, "No, I don't think Kermit would never play that role. I think he couldn't pull it off. No, it's got to do better." Same with Miss Piggy. There are no women in in Treasure Island. You know, the way
Yeah.
Stevenson wrote it. So we finally hit on Benjamina Gunn. You know, and Frank loved it because when Frank puts his hand up Miss Piggy's skirt, he's Miss Piggy. Doesn't matter if it's between takes. Between takes, he would go at Brian. Who wrote this shit? Yeah, I can do better. And uh, so even there was such a professionalism, and there'll be 8 people doing one Muppet, and they're all down on their knees, and they raise the setup so you're underneath it, and you see how they're on their knees with knee pads, and it's just stunning. And one day we were on the set. First day I had the kids on the set, and Julie and Jake were. I think Jake was already reading something else. I think he was reading Lord of the Rings. Julie was just enamored. And as we're leaving the set, we stayed around to talk to Brian. And as we're leaving the set, we go by a cart, a dolly cart, and all the Muppets are hanging on these spikes.
Yeah.
And Julia went,
Traumatizing.
"Oh my God, they're dead," and we realized we couldn't, but that's how
Yeah.
you feel them. And they've got the bead eyes, and
Yeah.
there's nothing real about them at all, but they came alive. And Muppet Treasure Island was the most fun I've had in this business. And I wish that somehow that had continued, but with CG and
Mhm.
all the, different
Yeah.
things, that they're like a vintage artifact.
Yeah.
But people still watch the movies. I still
Oh,
get people in
absolutely.
my classes to go, Muppet Treasure Island is my favorite Muppet movie,
Yeah.
Uh, and that's why I brought Brian in on Jack and the Beanstalk. I saw what he was
Hmm.
fearless. Special effects, complicated sets, there are more special effects shots in Jack and the Beanstalk than there were in the first Harry Potter. Yeah.
Interesting.
And he had one less than 5 weeks to prep that whole shoot.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And so what I learned from Brian, the less time you have to make a decision, the better.
yeah, understandable.
Yeah.
Um,
And Carl Sagan, I'd love to talk about Carl
oh,
because he was
yes,
unique.
please.
This was another one of and these are like you think when you get to be my age and you're looking back, these are the things they can't take away from you.
Hmm.
We were still shooting Hook when they started chasing me for Contact, and it was nice to be chased since I couldn't get arrested, 2 years before. Um, and my agent knew I was a sci-fi buff and knew that I was a big Carl Sagan fan, and they started chasing me to do Contact, and I just went no. The book is unadaptable,
Hmm.
you know. It's his only piece of fiction. Surely there's more important people than I am that you can go to. And they stayed after me. And finally I said, okay, what is the problem here? They'd been in development for 7 years.
Wow.
There had been 7 writers on the project and two directors. And I'm going, what would they can't they get it? Let me read a couple of the scripts and see if I can see what the problem is that maybe I hadn't recognized. And these were scripts by Academy Award winning writers and are nominated,
Hmm.
and it wasn't that they were shite. They had nothing to do with the book except the journey
Hmm.
that Jodie's character goes on to the center of the galaxy.
Yeah.
One of them had her son stowaway on the device. Um, and I said, these have nothing to do with the book, and said, what, did anybody talk to Carl? And they said, nope. No, the two directors and the 7 writers, they never talked to Carl. And I said, how's that possible? When you got the author here, he even, it was even originally started developing it as a screenplay, not a book.
Interesting.
And the screenplay involved Francis Coppola. And the screenplay was more about like War of the Worlds, a radio show where this is happening now as if CNN were covering,
Right.
you know. And Carl got frustrated with it, and he and Ann went off and wrote the book. So I finally figured out how to get out of the deal. I could get out. I said, okay, here's I'll do this on these conditions. First, Carl Sagan and Ann have to approve me as the writer, and they have to be part of the development process. They have to be actively, creatively engaged. Then you got to pay me all this money and fly my family, all this stuff. Figuring they would say no. They said yes. And so the producer, Linda Opes, who
Yeah. Classic.
recently passed away,
Yep.
she had introduced Carl and Ann. So we all had a family weekend up in Ithaca. Our kids, their kids, Linda, Ann, Carl, myself, and we spent the weekend as a family. And during the day, Carl and Ann and I would and Linda would work. And I interviewed him like a journalist. Why did you write the book? What do
Hmm.
you want people to take away from the movie? And what is important about it to you? And I interviewed him like a journalist. And in that weekend, we figured out the movie inside the book, and it became a friendship, families, and we were at Disney World together. And I got to know Carl in a very different way that most people would be intimidated by him. I never saw him speak down to anybody or talk down to anybody, even with as a kid audience. You know, he was interested in how people communicate, and he would grade my notes. He said, "Let me see your notes." I think the best I got was a B minus or something. But when we're in Disney World, we're all at breakfast at one of those,
Yep.
like where all the Disney characters come out,
Yeah.
Goofy and Pluto and Mickey and Minnie and Donald and and Sam uh, Sagan was like a year and a half old, the child that he and Ann had together. So Sam is sitting on Carl's knee. Sasha and Julia are the same age, and so we're watching Sam react to all the characters. And I'm watching Carl. Goofy comes over to the table and starts doing his thing. They can't speak. They're not allowed to speak.
Yeah.
They have all,
Hmm.
and I'm watching Carl sit there and watch Goofy. Then he finally reaches up and taps Goofy on the shoulder and says, Mr. Goofy, I have a question I'd like to ask you. Do they give you any special training for nonverbal communication? And Goofy goes, turns, and then he goes back to his thing, and Carl watches him and says, I have another question, Mr. Goofy. If a child is afraid of you, have they given you any training to make them unafraid or to remove the threat? Goofy, yeah. And by this time, I'm convinced that the actor playing Goofy is going, I'm talking to fucking Carl Sagan. And they went on back and forth, and finally Goofy sits down at the table
Oh
with
my,
his big paw and his pen and his autograph pad and starts writing out answers for Carl.
that's amazing.
And by this time now, other families at other tables are going, why didn't Goofy come to our table? So but that was and he was Carl was genuine. He wasn't making fun of
Oh
Goofy
yeah.
or any of that. He was
Yep.
genuinely interested in how this person was trying to communicate. And that's
Intellectual
the
curiosity.
same
And
thing he
yeah,
wanted to do with it. He wanted, how do we communicate with
yeah,
the
alien.
outer? Yeah. I was with him that day too when he turned on the radio. All the telescopes around the world when they turned them on. He was like a 18-year-old kid in high school. And they were supposed to all connect up with telephone, and
Hmm.
they couldn't get the phones to work, you know. And he cracked up. He said, "Here we are about to go millions of miles looking for extraterrestrial intelligence. We can't even get the goddamn phones to work."
That's great.
But he didn't live long enough to see the film.
Yeah.
He saw some of it.
Hmm.
I think he probably would have given us a B minus or it was a good start. But I did learn from him what his goal was, why he wrote the book. And he just wanted us to realize that there is a galaxy of intelligence that we could be a part of if we would turn our attentions to that instead of killing each other and raping the planet. That we could join this galaxy, this other galaxy of life, and realize how important and how precious the life is on any planet, and especially ours. That's all he wanted. Yeah.
If only more people wanted that,
Yeah.
the world would be a better place.
Yes, it was. Sorry.
Oh no, I
Yeah.
mean, that was a powerful statement. So yeah, but I was about to ask you about it. I definitely wasn't gonna go over a Carl Sagan job, but that was kind of what led me back through your career and realized that even though, like with Hook, it came from your kids,
Yeah.
there was all source material for all this stuff.
Yeah.
So it's a lot of your career, or at least that I'm seeing from the outside, things that got made were adaptations. So
Absolutely.
yeah, so talk a little bit about the constraints of adaptations, and also how much, like how much leeway do you really have? Like with Hook,
Uh,
some, with Treasure Island, you took some, but talk about adaptation. And because I think a lot of filmmakers stay away from that, they want to have their own ideas. But there's a lot of great ideas out there. How do you take somebody else's art and make it your own?
it is a good question. Adaptations seem to be what's the core of my career. Um, the it's different when the author's dead.
I
I
can see how
didn't
that could
I
help.
didn't I
Yeah.
didn't have, I didn't have Bram Stoker or J.M. Barrie breathing down my neck about why are you violating my precious space, you know.
But I
Um,
imagine other people were like, hey, you can't
yeah.
make changes to these things. This is lore,
Well,
And that.
Dracula was deemed the most faithful adaptation of the book ever, or the Coppola's Dracula,
Yeah.
except there's no love story in Dracula.
Yeah.
Not
A love
The
story.
way Stoker wrote it.
Yeah.
So that whole thing with Winona and Gary
Mhm.
came from my research, where I went back to the real Dracula and who I discovered was um, a Christian knight who was a member of a sacred order that was defend the cross of Christ.
Hmm.
That wasn't a Dracula I'd ever seen, you know, that Order of the Dracul, and that he married a Turkish woman, and he was not Turkish, and the Muslims and the Turks were having a war at that point with everybody, including the Voivode Dracula and his people, his realm, um, and that when they were when he led an attack on the Ottoman Turks and killed 30,000 of them and impaled them, and he got his reputation that way. Um, his wife was sent a letter from her cousins who were Turkish, saying that they had killed Dracula, and they were coming for her because
Mm.
the fact that she had married a Christian,
Mm-hmm.
they were going to dismember her. I mean, all kinds of horrible
Yeah.
things. Um, so they lied. They hadn't killed Dracula, but she committed suicide. She jumped into that river. It's all historical. She
Mm-hmm.
jumped into that river, left him a note. That since he's dead, didn't want to live anymore and wanted to join him, and etc. And I'm going, okay. And then the church, because you commit suicide, you can't. You're in purgatory. You can't ever ascend into whatever version of heaven you want. And I went, okay, here's a great conflict. This is why Dracula went to war with the church. This is why he's afraid of the cross, or no,
Yeah.
not afraid, but
Yeah.
why the
Yeah. Yeah.
cross so I who serve nations, all that stuff. Um, and 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 I had the basis for a love story.
Mm-hmm.
And so in the book, When Stoker has Dracula buying 10 homes in London, he wants to leave his old life and go to a new life. And he says in the book to his brides, I too have loved and I will love again. Stoker said that in the book. So I went, okay, I've got license. He goes to London looking for love, you know. And then the reincarnation part of it also came from another piece of the Stoker novel. Once Mina in the book drinks from his chest, drinks the blood, she
Mhm.
changes. I don't mean she just turns into a vampire. Her whole
Right.
attitude towards Dracula changes. Why do you pursue him? Why must you hunt him? You know, why it's I have great empathy for him. I feel sorry for, that's in Stoker. So I just took some license and knitted it together, and it was a part of the lore that had not really been explored because all the other vampire movies at that point about Dracula were somewhat cheesy and the Hammer films were great, but Christopher Lee wasn't a sex symbol. And the brides, all the women were victims in those movies. They
Yeah.
weren't powerful. It didn't have, and Stoker wrote two very powerful female characters in Lucy and Mina, very contemporary.
Hmm.
So that's where the love story came from. But the restrictions that I found were trying to convince the studio of certain things we wanted to keep that were in the book, like walking around in daylight. That's in the book.
Hmm.
When he's cruising for chicks, that's in the book.
Yeah.
And Francis had to go and say, nope, we're doing it. You're going to walk around the daylight. It's in the book. And because they wanted to cut out. They wanted we can't do that. Vampires can't. Well, you know, this is the guy that created the mythology that we've all screwed over. The other thing too about the book was that when I read the book, and a Texan with a Bowie knife is the one who skewered Dracula,
Hmm.
and I'm a Texan, and I'm going, oh man, I'm so doing this movie, you know. And you read the book, and none of the Dracula movies have anything to do with the book except he drinks blood, and the women seem to like him, and he wears a tuxedo and a cape, you know. And in the book, there's none of that. And I found out that all the adaptations came from a stage play that Balderson Dean did that introduced Bela Lugosi to the world on
Mm.
stage.
Hmm.
And I never could figure out why he made women faint and what the appeal was because as good as that movie is, once I read the novel, that adaptation paled. Yeah. In fact, I'll give you the last thing I learned. My neighbor above us, she's 27 years old, her husband's 28. She's reading Dracula, not him.
Hmm.
And what I found out after I read the novel, I would do a little poll at parties and stuff, and the men had never read Dracula, and inevitably, several women in the group had read Dracula. One of them even had it on her bedside table. So I'm going, okay, that tells me something.
Hmm.
The last thing, is that, and I'll give you one more. We went to the Broadway opening of the Balderson Dean play that Edward Gorey did the design, and Frank Langella was going to play Dracula, the first sexy man
Mm.
to play Dracula. And Leonard Wolf, who was my mentor and who wrote all the definitive works on Dracula, I brought him in years earlier. We had done a screenplay together, never got anywhere, but he and I went to opening night. And we're sitting there as a bunch of women with big hair in front of us. And the act curtain is is Langella in bed with his white uh, Shakespeare poet shirt on, and he's got it's Lucy in the play, and he opens up his chest, and he pulls her to his chest, and lights go out, blackout, you know, and you hear a collective gasp, not applause, but like a collective gasp in the theater. And the woman sitting in front of me in this big loud voice says, I'd rather spend one night with him dead than the rest of my life with my husband alive. And of course, everybody fell out around her, and I'm going, that's it.
Yeah.
it's a woman's story. It's
Mm-hmm.
about the women, not about the men. And that's what gave me the decoder ring for Lucy and Mina. You know, and it really guided the adaptation. You know,
Nice.
anything that was invented, there's not a lot that's invented except a love story. And I've told you the you know the where that came from.
Mm-hmm.
The most difficult adaptation I ever did. Oh, and my point was we stayed true to the novel.
Yeah.
What we added to it that's not in the novel was licensed, in my view, by the novel. There was an implied love story that Stoker either was afraid to write. You know, he's a Victorian man who's got homosexual leanings and um, uh, married to the woman who actually was the only woman that Oscar Wilde was ever in love with. I mean, he had a very complicated life. He died of syphilis, you know, even though he only spent one night with his wife. Um, but Stoker was writing almost an expose as a Victorian man. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, there's stuff in there that, you know, is if you read it, you're going, whoa, okay. Uh, but the toughest one I ever did was Tuck Everlasting. It's a 137-page book that every school kid in fifth grade and sixth grade reads uh, by Natalie Babbitt. Um, it's a very underrated film in my view. I thought Jay did a great job directing that film. Um, my son brought it home from school. He read it at school, said, "Dad, this is a movie." And he was 9 years old then, so he had a pretty good track record with me. So I listened to him. The book is beautiful. It's short. It's about immortality and kids having to make a decision whether to live forever or not, which I thought
Mm.
was a pretty interesting challenge. Natalie Babbitt was adamant about don't turn my book into a teenage love story. And I'm going, okay, watch. Um, the book is about a young girl who falls into trying to get away from home and not be sent away to school. Falls into and gets involved with this family that lives deep in the forest that she doesn't know they're immortal because they drank from a certain spring. Natalie in the book tells you all of that on page 30, 29. So there's no mystery about the family. So, and I'm going, you can't do that in a movie. You know, because as soon as you say, "Oh, we're immortal," you want to, "Oh, let's go play with that." You know, what is, and so I restructured it, um, invented some scenes that again had license in the book, and the voice of the girl that Natalie Babbitt wrote is not 10 years old. Even the narrator of the story is not 10 years old. I said, you didn't write a 10-year-old girl. You wrote whatever age you were with your version of
Mm.
of her character, but she's not 10 years old. So do you want to see a 10-year-old running around the forest with a 17-year-old hunk? And she went, ooh, no, no. I see what you mean. She gave me good high marks on the script when because I created that relationship, uh, and then saw the movie and hated it. You
Oh.
know, and I found out that her friends all convinced her that we had ruined the book. And
Mm.
I lectured I would go to schools because they wanted me to come and talk about Tuck Everlasting at the schools where we lived. And I would always do that, but book or movie, you know, especially adaptation. You teach a kid, what do you like better, the Harry Potter book or the Harry Potter movie? And it would be equally split,
Mm-hmm.
you know. And I would say, well, and then I would say, why is the book better than the movie? And they would have all kinds of answers. And what we came away with is that when you're doing an adaptation, your biggest foe is the movie everybody has in their heads of the books they've read.
Yeah.
That's your competition. That's what you're competing against. So you better bring something new to the table to have them go, oh, that's actually kind of cool.
Mm-hmm.
You know? not in the book, but I like it. You
Yeah.
know, or it was a line of description or something that you turned into
Yeah.
a story element. So that was the other big one, is remind yourself that you're competing against the imaginary movie inside your audience's head if it's a book or a
Adaptation.
play. Yeah.
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 All right. So I'm kind of at the before I get into your television writing, let's kind of back up a little bit and talk about writing credits. Yeah, what time do you have to, I know you have to teach a class. Is it online or do you have to get in a
It's
car and
it's
drive?
online. It's online.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
I'll still try to keep it tight though. That gives me more time. Um, what are the different types of writing credits and what do they mean? You've got a lot of different writing credits. I mean, just off the top of my head, creative by, developed by, teleplay by, written by, story by, sometimes, and then it gets real complicated with all the ampersands and the ands and the commas. But generally speaking, as the creator, what does that mean? As the teleplay, like what are some of the main ones
Yeah.
so people kind of understand what those mean?
Well, we'll start the screenplay by uh usually means that you're creating it's an original work. Um uh it can say based on the book by so and so. They used to have an adaptation by credit back in the days, and it's still around, but nobody uses it. Screenplay by implies that you've done original work, unless it says based on
Mm-hmm.
the such and such characters or based on such and such. Um, story by story is the essential story ingredients that preceded any writing of a screenplay. Uh, uh, if it's an original story by, you usually say original story by or story by. If it is a oh screen story by, indicates that you had an adaptation, but you brought enough unique and original elements to it that they'll give you a special screen story credit by. Uh, A&D spelled out means you didn't work together as a team. When you
Mm,
see that, it's you might see so and so, writer A and writer B.
got
The
it.
ampersand means you worked as a team.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it's interesting because an original screenplay is treated very differently than an adaptation for writers.
Mm-hmm.
An original screenplay, the author of record has a lot more rights to the back end, to television, to residual, to the royalties for TV, sequels and remakes. They have to come to you first, or if they can't make a deal, you get certain passive payments. That's if you've written an original screenplay. Adaptations, it's more difficult. They don't want to give you passive payments or what they call separation of rights, since it was already published. Previously published material is the phrase they use for adaptation. Doesn't matter if it's a magazine article or a newspaper article, a song, and a book, or
Mm-hmm.
another movie, a previous movie. It's still, you're doing a sequel or a remake. You're not going to get the same passive payments or what they call separation of rights.
Mm-hmm.
Um, some of us do. I used to be able to get separation of rights based on credit because I would always bring something unique and original to the adaptation. Like, for instance, Hook is based on Peter Pan,
Yeah.
but I guarantee you they didn't put a Hook poster cover on the James Barrie novel and release it as the adaptation.
Yeah.
They hired Terry Brooks to write a big novel based on my ever-changing screenplay. So that was a test case. The Writers Guild actually we had a settlement with Sony because so much of my work was original, grown up Peter Pan,
Mm-hmm.
uh, and uh, that was a nice test case. It didn't change the fact that separation of rights is still better, is still a gem and a boost for the writers who write original work. Um, what was it? Oh, created by TV.
Yes.
Created by is that's my favorite credit. It doesn't really mean anything anymore as it used to. Created by is who the original work was done by, and it can also be an adaptation. like the series, like the Hot Zone. I got
Hmm.
created by on the Hot Zone. Um, the Hot Zone was that I wrote was based on a 28-page New Yorker magazine article, not the book that Richard Preston wrote after I'd finished my work. He wrote the magazine article, then he went on to write the nonfiction book on Hot Zone. I got created by it because I had created so much original stuff to make that article work, and a lot of that ended up in his book. So created by is for me is a very coveted uh, credit. We got the same, Amanda and I, my female writing partner, and I got the credit created by on Crossbones. Uh,
Yeah, and those were my next two
yeah.
things. Those were the first, I mean, I think you had worked on maybe one TV series before, but talk about the difference from being a writer who works in collaboration, but mostly movies throughout your
Yeah.
career, at least things that got produced, and now you are working in television. So what is the difference that you see in those two spaces?
Um, One, it's hard to be a solo act as a writer in a series.
Yeah.
You want to be part of a room, or you want to have a room that supports your vision, and also can because it keeps you from getting stale. Dan Erickson, who created Severance, has become a good friend and is actually sponsoring a couple of things I'm doing. He had done nothing before in his entire career, and he wrote Severance on spec.
Hmm.
And Ben Stiller got his hands on it, and the rest is history. But because Dan wrote an original, wasn't an adaptation, Ben was very wise to keep him on because clearly Dan had some kind of vision that nobody else had. So, um, and they just got picked up for season 3. But I know from Dan that the writers' rooms don't always go smoothly. There are often struggles, which is
Mhm.
why a showrunner is there to make the decision and say, no, we're going to go with that bit in this episode, what have you. Um, I have not been in a writer's room yet. I've only created
Got it.
and written pilots. After that, it's been taken away and
Mhm.
moved on to other people. I'm going to say that is because the relationship with the producers was not what it should have been at the beginning.
Yeah.
I resurrected Hot Zone, and Linda, God rest her soul, um, who had originally were trying to produce it as a feature, had to be come back in, and she promptly moved me aside and brought in. I actually worked with the first writer, brought in showrunners, but I get credit on every episode,
Yeah.
and that's because the work I did in 1994 survived 17 writers, 5 directors, I mean, regime changes. So that was a blessing and a curse.
Yeah.
It pissed off the showrunners and pissed off the other writers because they thought they should get all the credit. And and we had 18 professional writers do the arbitration on the episodes, and they
Jeez.
gave the credit to me.
Nice.
I say gave. I earned the credit.
You earned it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I do think the writer's room is a different dynamic. That it's more like running a workshop,
Mhm.
and I've been doing that for a long time. So the writer's room doesn't seems very familiar to me, and it requires a lot of trust. And I think my two of my my showrunner, two women, they're partners, showrunners. They have one rule: no assholes.
Oh, yeah.
Doesn't care
That's
how
the new
talented,
mantra.
doesn't matter how talented you are, what your credits are, what you've done. You know, if you're an asshole, you don't belong in the writer's room.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you've heard stories about those.
Oh, yeah. So do you think,
It's a different, it's actually healthy because I like that. And when I do classes, like I'm teaching today at the Lynch uh, master classes, everybody has the same goal. which is to
Mhm.
put up a good series and get there however you're going to get whatever stepping stones. And the other thing too is a good idea is a good idea no matter who it comes from or where it comes from. So you got to get over that hump in your sensitivity training.
Yeah.
You want good ideas, and you don't want people to hold back on their good ideas because they think they're going to get stepped on. And Jake and my son and I are working on a series right now that I hope we finally get to be in the writers' room. He's taking a staff writing boot camp right now to
Nice.
get to official.
Hmm.
Um, uh, do we think we can write every episode ourselves? Absolutely. You know, so you lay out the whole season and you have other people come in and write,
Hmm.
and you get to sit back and edit.
Yeah.
That's I don't
That's
need
the
to
dream.
I don't need to write everything.
Yeah.
You know, just you see, always amazing when other people show up and go, "What about this?" Or they do their pass at your work, and you go, "Man, wow, I never thought of it. I didn't think of that, or I didn't think that character could do that, or how did you know to do that?" And that was to go into character building, which is another whole thing that we could talk about.
Yeah. And that is exactly what I want to talk about next. I want to move into process. So, kind of development and pitching and rewrites and notes, but I know we're short on
No,
time.
no, no. I'm gonna make it a little get 10 extra minutes here. Go ahead.
So, you know, in the development phase, and we don't have to spend a lot of time on development log lines, the short synopsis, synopsis, but I want to have you talk about your process because you've developed a process in all of this that you find really works. And, some people sometimes get concerned about, well, it's a formula, like, save the cat is a formula. And, but once you've mastered the formula, you get to break all the rules. But you have developed something that you feel like works for the everyman writer or every woman writer. So, what is your process? Or your process with another writer?
Yeah.
From the moment you come up with an idea, where does it go from there?
Um, this all is now embodied in something we call the Hart chart, and I didn't give it the name. My people that I worked with gave it the name. Call it the Hart chart. When we were doing Dracula, uh, which we'd gone through an incredible process. I mean, I learned from Francis so much. You have to put a script in pre-production just like you do a movie. You got to do your pre-production for the script first before you write it. However, we did get to the editing room on Dracula and ran into trouble. And he called me and said, "I want you to come out, get on a plane, come out. I don't know how long you'll be here. I don't like the movie. I don't like, the actors. I don't like the studio." I mean, I'm paraphrasing. Francis has a very different view of that. But basically, what he was saying is that I need you to come see the movie and sit
Mm.
with me. And we did. He showed me the cut, and I agree with him. I didn't like it either. And this is, we had been through this whole process of vetting out the script before we shot it. Yet, in watching the cut, um, there's stuff missing. There are narrative pieces missing. There was once the actors take over, they're different communicating differently and who wants to be on top and what have you. Um, and I mean, I got sat there getting drunk watching the movie and going, I don't like it either. And he came down and sat down and pitched me the story. He had his little beret on and his little cigar and his cravat, and his smoking jacket and his little turkey slippers. And he sat down like an 18-year-old kid and pitched me the story. And isn't that what we did? Isn't that what we shot? And what we sat for the next 2 weeks and looked at everything. And I realized that we had forgotten pieces of narrative, or now we needed new pieces of narrative. We needed, I kept saying there's got to be a way to do this in the script stage so you don't get to the editing room and go, holy shit, especially if you're an indie filmmaker.
Yeah.
I mean, he called back, Gary and Winona to reshoot the ending. Um, and I say reshoot, we didn't reshoot any scene. We shot pieces,
Mm.
beginnings, endings, change of
Hmm.
voiceover. The ending was the original ending was Winona and Gary walk into the chapel and she puts the knife through his heart and he's redeemed and she's redeemed and then she gets up and walks out into the sunset with Keanu Reeves. And the audience hated it, absolutely hated it, you know. But we had identified some things we needed to do. So we showed the film to Lucas. Lucas said, you're not, you broke your own rules. You know, she's got to cut off his head you showed us how to kill a vampire in the movie. You said, these are the rules. She's got to cut off his head. So Francis called me and said, do you think we can get Winona and Gary back if Winona cuts off Gary's head? And I said, I think that's the only way you'll get Winona back. And by that time, they were having a tough time. But at the end of the film, in the end of Dracula, there are medium shots and wide shots that are shot almost a year apart, and they're seamless. You can't tell, you know. And I bugged Francis so much about this guy. I needed some way of measuring. I said, we're missing something. He gave me 3 questions. He said, try these. These are journalism questions. Maybe this will help. And he gave me the 3 questions, which sound like screenwriting 101 until you try to answer them. And then I realized that by using these questions, I'm spinning out a character-driven narrative as opposed to plot-driven. And that was new for me. Getting to know your characters before you write a word of script and living with them and answering a series of questions about them forces you to write. And by answering those questions, you will have created the basis for your character-driven narrative. We ended up calling it the Hart Chart Toolkit. We came up with a chart that I stole from my cardiologist. And I'd go from EKG and I'd see the numbers going, all that stuff, and go, can I take that idea and apply it to the written word? Can I take the heartbeat? Can I measure the heartbeat of the emotional journey that my characters are on as they go through their ups and downs and their progress and setbacks, and give that a way of analyzing your script for the rewrite? It was a rewrite tool.
So this is the rising and falling action,
Yeah.
essentially.
But it's more than this: first opportunity, second opportunity, visible, tangible goal, Cinderella moment, top of the mountain, point no return, plan falls apart, shit hits the fan, all is lost, redemption. It's not just rising and fall.
Yes.
There's a method to each signpost. I mean, there is a purpose for each signpost. And it's not a formula, but every great narrative, every good, especially the fairy tales, that's where I started applying the fairy tales. They're all very carefully structured, and Robin Williams, everybody's how brilliant Robin was. He just pulled this out of the air. I worked with Robin and I watched him very closely on his live shows. We backstage all the time. And I watched him pull out his buck slip at the end of every show and mark stuff and move stuff around. And I began to realize that all of those people that do improv, it's structure.
Yeah.
If you've ever seen him do the Scotsman, the drunk Scotsman who invented golf, you've seen him do that.
Yeah, it's been ages, but I have seen
Go
it.
back and watch it. It doesn't matter how many times I see it. It always ends with the same punchline, and you're always on the floor laughing your ass off because you feel like you're hearing it for the first time. And he tells it the same way every time. That's structure. When he's got good timing, or she can land a joke, or she really knows how to sell it. That's structure. So as soon as I stopped thinking of structure as a formula and structure as my villain and as my friend, totally freed me. So now you have the toolkit, our Hart, www.hartchart.com. You have your toolkit. My toolkit is that thick. Robert McKee's is this thick. When was the last time you took your Robert McKee book off the shelf?
I read it once.
There you go.
And I'm a producer, not a writer, but I was like,
yeah. But my toolkit is a working writer's toolkit. I use it every single day in my work. It doesn't get old. It doesn't get stale. It's not a formula. And then we have the chart, which is that on one page, you can see your entire movie, the emotional journey of your characters. And we're now that's a monthly subscription. It's all online in the cloud. All your stuff is saved. And we're just adding the story compass, which takes AI, which I marched against, during the strike, and uses AI as a further diagnostic tool for what you've already written,
Mm.
for the questions, the signposts. It gives you an analysis that way, so it helps you plan your rewrite. And this I started this back in 1992. It wasn't until 2010 that we actually, I mean, I introduced it at Austin Film Festival back then. I would draw these horrible, nobody could read my handwriting or anything. So, and finally in 2015, was it 2015? Yeah, 2015, a developer saw me at Austin and said, I can do this as an app, and everybody's been begging me to do something with it. So now we have the app. It's online. It's intuitive. The toolkit works. I've got people all over the world that still swear by it. I have students I taught at Columbia in 2001 who still use the toolkit. And they've gone on to become big producers and directors and what have you. So it is and some people don't believe in it. Some writers don't believe in any of this guru stuff, that you just write. And I found that threshold writers need to build confidence, and they need a jump start.
Mm-hmm.
And things like Save the Cat are really good books, but they're not practical in terms of actually applying to what you sit down at the page to
Yeah.
face. Um, my whole thing is you'll never face a blank page again. You'll some
So
shitty
are you going to
ones.
tell me the three questions, or are those the?
The three questions. Go to their website. Now, here's the three questions. Who is my main character, and what do they want when we meet them?
Yeah.
Want meaning ego, material. Me, I. You know, what do they want when you meet them? Second question is who are the relationships and what are the obstacles my main character has to encounter to get what they want?
Mm-hmm.
And then Francis said the last question is the trick question. He said, in the end, does my main character get what they want or not get what they want? And is it good or bad for them if they did or did not?
Mm-hmm.
Dot, 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 did they get what they need?
Yeah.
So, and I said, oh, it's okay. That's, and I started trying to answer them. And then we added 8 more questions to that, which are about building character. Um, why now? What is it? What's the wound that has to be healed?
Mm-hmm.
And my favorite, do you have a satisfying ending? Not happy, sad, Hollywood, good, bad,
Satisfying. Yeah.
satisfying.
I like
Have
that.
you taken your audience to a place where they're satisfied? You didn't cheat them or pull the wool over their eyes or do something convenient and you wouldn't, it's amazing how many people can identify things they've seen without a satisfying ending.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
All the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that
So,
was the basis for it. And that's of it. You can get that online as well. I usually have them printed up for festivals. It's a PDF, you'll use it all the time. Yeah.
so you, if I'm hearing you, you start with character first. Who are the characters? Who do they interact with? What is the world? Your kind of world character and world
Yeah.
building first to create a character driven story.
Yeah.
So when it gets time to start kind of plotting out that story, are you pitching things before? I mean, at this point in your career, I'm assuming you're not writing spec scripts. You're pitching them to see if somebody's going to pay you.
Well, no, I still write spec because that's the best way right now. And pitching is awful right now in our business. I
Yeah.
mean, it's very difficult to sell a pitch.
Especially
So
over when they don't put you in a room
yeah,
anymore, you
yeah.
know.
That doesn't mean we won't, but right now everything we're doing is either commissioned or came to us. We were lucky enough to have them come, but we are preparing pitches. We've got two or three pitches that have major producers involved. Still has to go be sold.
Yeah. So
But
how
yeah,
far do you go into the pitch process? I mean, are you a synopsis, a short synopsis, or well, a log line, a short synopsis, and then a longer synopsis? Like how much like business proposals back in the day used to be really, really thick, and now they
Yeah.
want 7 pages, and it's not even a business proposal anymore.
No, it's not, and
How have your pitch packages
it's a
changed?
teaser. It's a teaser. We try to do a log line, a summary, an overview of what the series is about,
Mm-hmm.
and then the main characters. And you the more you put more content in on the main characters than you do on the plot and any of that stuff. Yeah, they really don't in TV. It really is about character. That why they're going to come back every week to watch. If you try to describe Severance without the characters, as a plot,
Yeah.
it's like, oh my, no, I don't think so. Um, Same thing with Ted Lasso,
Mm-hmm.
logline. Guy goes to American goes to London to resurrect a losing soccer team. You it's the characters that make Ted Lasso work.
Oh, 100%.
And now he's coming back. We'll see how they do.
Yeah, that'll
So
be
if
very
you do
interesting.
anything in your pitch, it's about character.
Yeah.
Because when you describe the character and what they want or what they need, you're telling their story. Like what did Jodie Foster want in Night Country? You know,
Yeah.
what does she need?
Mm-hmm.
Her need had to do with her wound and her personal shit. Her want was to solve the mystery. That was the
Yeah.
exterior. The need is what drives the story.
Mm-hmm.
And how we peel that back and reveal all of her her wounds and her dark
Mm-hmm.
side and the things that she doesn't want people to know.
Yeah.
So, and when you write from a character point of view, you are telling the story, but it's not like
Mm-hmm.
exterior anywhere in the USA day.
Yeah.
Uh, Nobody wants that. At least, and it's also more fun to talk about the characters. Because and then instantly, I mean, usually I always also try to find some way that what why this material spoke to me, what it is I found that I like about it,
Yeah.
that I want to see about it. And it also is an icebreaker. It's an easier way to talk than it's just starting the pitch.
Yeah.
It's a way to ease into it.
I mean, the question I always ask my writers is, I mean, among many questions, but why you and why now? Why are you the one to tell this story,
Yeah.
and why now? How is it relevant?
Well, that why now is one of the 10 questions.
Yeah.
That's a big one because
Yeah.
most writers don't know, well, why not next year or last year? Why is your character a candidate for this story now?
Mhm.
But yeah, why now is a big one, and also why you're uniquely qualified is a very good question because that usually has to do with what attracted you to the material.
Mhm.
Some personal experience in your life, some other interests you have are in terms of humanity. You got a Jones for space sci-fi with monsters with big teeth. You had a relative who this struck a chord about because it reminded you of them or a brother or somebody or a family member. Yeah, finding your own personal connection to the material is really important. It was not just so you can get a paycheck, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I assume that, well, I don't know how much I mean, well, you're teaching, so you're out there meeting students. What are some of for new screenwriters or emerging screenwriters, up and coming screenwriters, what are some of the mistakes you see them making, either in their writing or in how they talk about their work?
Exposition is always tough. Usually exposition is this one,
Mhm.
yakety yak, and learning how to dramatize exposition is one of the things that I work on without having to have the exposition be dialogue. Behavior, how they act in a situation, um, some piece of information that comes to them that's going to change the course of their story or their trajectory in life. Exposition is hard. The bad example of exposition is the first Die Hard, when Bruce Willis gets into a limousine and basically tells his whole life story to the driver. on the way in. You know, why he's coming, his wife, they're separated. He's trying to get, I'm just going, really? Couldn't we discover this? Now I'm waiting around for, okay, how's he gonna, you know, he could have told another story about something else besides just revealed everything that's wrong with him and everything that's, now I can't argue with success, but I wouldn't have put my audience through a 3 minute or 4 minute conversation in a limo about, my life. So, um, now Alfred Hitchcock did it brilliantly in Stranger on a Train because that's what set up the
Mm-hmm.
whole movie was the deal. But Robert, a great, wonderful actor, oh, not Robert Morris, who made I'll kill somebody for you, you kill somebody for me. Yeah, that's now I'm hooked. That's exposition I want to know more about. The other is behavior, um, the mannerisms, the how a person acts, whether it's in contradiction to what they just said. Action is character.
Mm-hmm.
Um, uh, Habits, uh, phobias. I don't see enough behavior in the writing. I don't mean long descriptive passages about how many storefronts they've walked by or something, or
Yeah.
but behavior.
So
Uh,
this goes back to what you were saying earlier about developing the character and looking at things that may not have anything to do with your movie, but what are their ticks?
yeah,
What are all those things, whether it's a part of the story that is driving things from a character perspective, we need to know that person inside and out and why they tick.
it will inform your scenes. Knowing your character will inform the scenes that you come up to match the signposts in your narrative. They'll pop up when you least expect it. But it may be how they react to when they see. There may be something like one of the things we try to do is if you can find a fear that your main character has that shuts them down emotionally and a vapor, like deer in the headlights, whether it's a memory or a person or what, if you can find that fear, then you've come up with a perfect um, uh, trigger for your nemesis to have on that character.
Mm-hmm.
If your nemesis represents like Darth Vader, that's Luke's biggest fear. He's going to turn out to be like his father,
Mm-hmm.
So anytime Darth is a part of the mix, there's that fear of I'm going to be like him. I'm going to be like him. I have to fight it. I have to fight it. So if you can find a fear or a phobia or a wound that somebody else represents in your story, could be the person you're in love with. you know, that pushes that button. Then you got
Mm-hmm.
the perfect nemesis. You the other one is people always say they can't write dialogue. I always do exercise like write 20 ways to say hello without saying hello.
Mm.
Or 10 ways. Or give me 10 answers to the question, "How are you today?" That is not fine, good. Give me. I want to know. I want to hear some emotion. I want to hear some feeling. I want to hear, like I get asked that every day. My standard answer now is, "How you doing?" I go, "I'm still getting my Social Security." You but little exercises like that would free them up from, and also people don't talk in complete perfect
Mm-hmm.
sentences. They don't talk in perfect English. They just don't. They don't finish sentences. So they'll stop and think about something. Um, so trying to write perfect English dialogue is a mistake. Now,
When I first started out as a producer, I used to work with my writers by fixing their dialogue as if that would fix the problems with the story. And
no,
I quickly
no,
started reading books
yeah,
and working with better writers. And now I don't even think about dialogue because going back to your point, if you know your characters and have developed them, the dialogue just falls
yeah.
into place so many.
Also, what is it? write your dialogue first and then write the same scene without saying what you just said.
Oh, that's
Make it be subtext,
mm-hmm.
you know,
Yeah.
so that's what's not being said that we get in the scene. So,
Yeah. I have
um,
one more question because I know we're pretty much out of time, unless you give me more time, but I know we're pretty much out of time. As a producer working with writers, so you're a young up and coming screenwriter, you're a young up and coming producer helping that writer develop the project. You know, you talked a little bit about notes. What advice do you have for producers working with writers and learning how to understand a good note or how to give a good note?
well, I've had it both ways. I've been shelled, and I've also had the smarmy notes that you're going, but what do you really want me to, what are you really saying?
Yeah.
You know, so praise. Writers always like to hear praise first, and then you get to that terrifying but. You know,
Yeah.
so I would try to, if ever as a producer, I always try to encourage them that with the good work that they've done, and that there are some areas which I think need addressing. You know, we should discuss. I don't allow negative notes that don't have solutions. So if a
Mm,
producer brings a negative note in, this is not working for me, have two or three reasons why, and also have a couple of solutions that you want to see what they think. You know,
mhm.
and I always love it when they say this is a bad idea, but, and I'm going, no, there's no bad ideas. You know, there's ideas. Some work and some don't, but there's no bad ideas. But I would always try to have solutions and not just have that phrase, this doesn't work for me, you
Yeah.
know, unless you're firing the writer or something. Or this is our third draft and we're still not there. Um, that's the big one for me. Have solutions. And I do that in my classes. They all bring, they're so good at it. So I'm just amazed at how good they are at giving each other notes, you know. There's only a couple times where we've had some head bumping, you know, and me too. I've got one girl who's incredibly talented, but is very strident in terms of what she's willing to change and not willing to change. You know, and I have to work and work and work and massage and massage and massage. And the draft she just turned in, she went back and did a lot of the work, you know, and I'm going to wait and see what people say about it. It won't be me. I want to hear what her
Mm,
colleagues say. They're so good about supporting each other. Um, uh, if you're going to drop the hammer, don't drop the hammer first. You know, at least give them the encouragement of what they've done that does work. I think that's it. Have solutions. Don't just have criticism, but have or suggestions
yeah.
at solutions. Um, that's the big one for me. And Francis was right. Don't speak first. I mean, the producer should speak first. Don't put it on the writer to let the producer should take the lead.
Mhm.
You know, since you're the one giving the notes.
Yeah. It took me years to figure out what the problems were because I didn't understand story structure and
Yeah,
character.
that's the other thing
And
too.
once I
Yeah,
got that, and I'm the one who has to praise first because I always jump into problems. I came
yeah,
up as line producer, so it's all about solving problems. But I realized quickly that they aren't received well if you don't praise first. And I am the one who says it's a bad idea because I'm not a writer.
yeah.
Here's something similar. Here's something like this could fix the problem. And I
Right.
think that helped opening up I have a problem and you're the problem to, hey, let's have a conversation and see if we can tackle this together. And if we can't, we'll go off our separate ways, think about it, and come back and talk again.
The other thing I would piggyback on that with is that sometimes producers give a note and there not aware of the domino effect it can have
Mhm.
in other parts of the script.
Yep.
So when a writer comes back to you and says, "Okay, if we do that, do you want to do you want to do you understand that it may impact this over here, and do you want to change that too?" because that's been my biggest problem with most producer notes. If I have a consistent problem, is they don't take into consideration the big picture
Yeah.
about what they're asking be done, or that's totally antithetical to the behavior your characters had all the way up to that point.
Hmm.
That means we got to go back and and rejigger this. So a lot of times I don't think they think about the writer got to have it all on the page and here. So that's Jake and are very careful when we start pointing that out. We're not trying to be difficult. We're trying to demonstrate what can happen when you make this change. Does that mean we have to change this too and this too and this too? Then suddenly oh well, let's discuss it, or we have a bigger discussion to have. So that
Yeah.
would be the other one.
I always encourage producers who want to be creative producers to be nuts and bolts producers. In other words, people who've broken down a script before.
Yeah,
Because if you've broken down multiple scripts, that's where I find, I can read a script for pleasure and then read it again. And I'm like, something's not right. But as I start to break down that script in a movie magic, that's where the big holes in the story start emerging. And I
yeah,
go, okay, here are the continuity errors. Here are the issues that need solving. And I think having that training as a producer helps you understand how you can unwind a whole storyline if you don't understand what the problem is.
yeah. Now that's what Francis said. You to be a great director, you first have to be a good writer.
Yeah.
Meaning, if you want to be a great producer, you should at least have the mechanics of writing at your fingertips. I'm going to send you the toolkit.
Excellent.
You will find it very useful and probably already intuitive. Intuitive. It's supposed to be intuitive. It's like, oh yeah, I do that. Oh yeah, that's not foreign to me.
Yeah.
It's supposed to be intuitive. So, um, and I know we've covered a lot of ground here, so I'll be curious to see how this all ends up.
Well, we're start to finish. I'm not editing anything. And I would talk
Whoa.
to you for another 3 hours if you didn't have to go teach a class. This has been absolutely delightful. So thank
Well,
you
thank
so
you.
much for your time. I really,
Thank
really
you.
appreciate it.
And I hope at some point I can go back to Atlanta for a physical uh, presence at the film festival.
Oh my God.
I do
We would
Austin
love
every
to have you.
year, and it's my heroin. If I don't go to Austin, I get cranky. So
Austin is a fantastic festival. I went there. I mean, I've been to South by Southwest and Sundance with films, but one of the first films I produced, a musical
yeah,
about an old man who kills his wife, but we don't know it until she comes back to haunt him as a flower, and then you realize that he killed her with the
ah,
flower. It was a poisonous nightshade,
yeah.
but it was a old person musical.
Wow.
We called it a garage musical. But what I really respected about Austin as a writers conference is they take all these out of town producers and hook them up and have meetings with all their local writers.
Yeah,
And they're
yeah,
really trying to get people to get those projects made.
yeah.
And I have all the respect in the world for Austin. It's a
Yeah, no,
fact.
Barbara's done a great job. I've been going since the very beginning, so it's we're hanging in there. Yeah.
Excellent. Well, thank you
Okay,
so
thank
much.
you.
And you have a wonderful rest of your day.
Here's
And
my closing phrase.
oh, yes, sir.
Okay. Nobody has a job in this town until some writer types the end. So go type the end.
Absolutely.
All right.
Perfect end note. Thank you.
Thank you. Be safe.